He pulled the sword from the stone and earned the right to marry the alien princess. The sword stood buried in stone on the summit of Mount Valian, where the sky shimmered green and the clouds drifted like rivers of fire. No one had touched it for 500 cycles. According to legend, only one worthy of ruling alongside the royal bloodline of the alien planet Ytherra could lift it. Thousands had tried. None had succeeded. Until today. The gathered nobles and warriors gasped as the human's fingers closed around the ancient hilt, and the blade slid free like it had simply been waiting for him. The wind died. The clouds stilled. The light above flickered with quiet awe, and the alien princess Altheira, heir to the throne of Ytherra, stood frozen at the foot of the stone, her pale violet eyes locked on the man who now held the sword that had defied kings and conquerors alike. He was not like the others. His armor was scorched and simple, nothing like the gleaming silver plate worn by Ytherran champions. His face was tired, worn, his hair dark and tangled. His skin bore the marks of too many battles and not enough peace. But in his eyes, brown, steady, and calm, there was something the princess could not name. Strength, yes, but something more. Peace. State your name, called the Grand Chancellor, voice tight with disbelief. The human turned slowly. Daren Holt, of Earth. A low murmur spread through the court. An earthborn? A human? Pulling the sword from the stone? Impossible. Altheira stepped forward, her silver gown glinting like starlight. Her voice was soft but clear. Do you know what that sword means, Daren Holt of Earth? He nodded once. I read your legends. You seek power? The Chancellor snapped. A throne that does not belong to you? Daren looked past him, directly at Altheira. No, I seek peace. Then why take the sword? She asked. Because your world needs someone who believes in it more than in himself, he replied. Altheira's breath caught. Later, after the court had disbanded and the officials scurried to consult ancient laws and arcane prophecies, Altheira found Daren alone in the high garden. He had set the sword beside him and was gazing out over the crystal lakes that floated above the capital. You confuse them, she said, approaching. I confuse myself sometimes, he answered. She sat beside him. You pulled it. No one else could. Do you know what that means? He nodded. That I have the right to marry the princess. And become king, she added. He looked at her. And do you want that? She hesitated. I don't know. My father arranged this tradition to protect our lineage, but it was always about strength, might, war. You are not what we expected. I never am, he said with a smile. She studied him. What did you see when you touched the sword? He looked back toward the horizon. I saw a burning field. My world, bombed during the early wars. I saw my brother fall. I saw a little girl screaming. I was holding her hand. And I knew I didn't want to be a warrior anymore. I wanted to end it. She was silent. Then, and yet you picked up the sword. He turned to her. Because sometimes peace must be defended, but never with pride, only with purpose. Altheira stood, unsure what to feel. You speak like no one I've ever met. He chuckled. That's usually the start of something strange. The next morning, the royal trial was announced. A ceremonial test all sword-bearers must complete. Not of battle, but of wisdom and unity. If Daren passed, the marriage would be sanctioned. If he failed, the sword would return to stone. He entered the Hall of Echoes, where illusions of the past came alive to challenge the soul. His final opponent appeared as his reflection, twisted, angry, full of vengeance. The Daren who wanted to destroy the world that had wronged him. They fought without blades. Word against word. Belief against belief. You want peace, the twisted version said, but peace is fragile, weak. It dies in fire. Then I'll carry it through the fire, Daren answered. You'll burn. Then let me burn, if that's what it takes. The illusion shattered. The elders declared the trial passed. The sword flared with blue light, and across the kingdom, bells began to ring. The wedding was set at dawn, beneath the twin moons of Ytherra. Altheira stood atop the sky bridge, wind catching her hair, heart thundering in her chest. She had spent years being taught to be a queen, taught to command fleets, to read political games, to wield power with poise and precision. But no one had taught her how to feel this. Not fear. Hope. Daren approached in ceremonial white, the sword sheathed at his back. He stopped beside her, and for a long moment, they simply stared at each other. You could still run, she teased, trying to hide the tremble in her voice. He smiled. Not after all that climbing. She laughed softly, and the ceremony began. They stood beneath the binding lights as the high star priest spoke ancient vows. Daren repeated them carefully, voice steady. Altheira followed, her voice gentler but no less firm. When the final words were spoken, the skies seemed to breathe. The moons aligned, casting their silver light directly on the couple. The sword pulsed once on Daren's back, then fell silent. Altheira reached for his hand. He took it, and the crowd roared. That night, after the feast and the toasts, after the nobles finally left and the stars were alone with them, Altheira found herself sitting beside her new husband, watching the stars. I never thought this would happen, she said quietly. Me neither, he said. What now? He turned toward her. Now we build a future that doesn't need swords stuck in stones. She leaned her head on his shoulder. And if the wars return, he exhaled. Then we fight to protect, not to conquer. We lead not as rulers, but as examples. She closed her eyes. You know, when I was a child, I thought whoever pulled the sword would be some towering hero. A legend. A god. He chuckled. Sorry to disappoint. No, she said, smiling. You're better. You're real. In the years that followed, under King Daren and Queen Altheira, Ytherra changed. The war-forged empire became a beacon of peace. Diplomacy flourished. Old enemies became partners. The sword was never drawn again, not in battle. It remained in the royal hall, a symbol, not of power, but of restraint. And in the whispers of starlit halls and moonlit balconies, people still spoke of the day a human pulled the sword from the stone and earned the love of a princess not through conquest, but through kindness.